Hey everyone, this is Braden from the Catechumen, and welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be looking at some pro-life and pro-choice argumentation with none other than the king of comedy on Catholic YouTube, Seth, Deuterocomical. What is going on, dude? What is
Yo,
up?
what's up? Hey, not much. It's good to collab with you again. This is gonna be fun.
When's the next Inquisition episode? Because I'm waiting for it.
I wish
That's
I
like
could
my
tell you that I have like a bunch lined up, but I really don't. It's I'd love to, but it's you get the stars have to align as far as like people being in the
yeah,
same city, having all the equipment. So we'll see. It
dude.
might be a once or twice a year kind of thing. I don't know.
So true. Hey, I mean, and it's worth the wait. Honestly, it's like the
Yeah,
best video on YouTube right now. If you haven't
yeah.
seen that video, go check out Seth Deuterocomical. His channel is going to be linked in the description. He does a lot of
Mhm.
funny stuff. So, today we have two videos that we're going to be reacting to, and the first one is from this Ellen Fisher podcast. And I guess maybe Seth, you can introduce what we're going to be doing with these videos, I suppose. Like, why are we
Yeah.
bringing these videos up?
So I saw this was uploaded 4 days ago. This debate between Isabel Brown and Bronte Remzick. I thought it was interesting, and I've seen this Bronte Renzick person before. She was on Michael Knowles' channel a couple years ago, I think. She's like a medical student, and she's very pro-choice. And I would say, she's pretty intelligent. She's not compared to some other pro-choice people, but there's also some serious flaws in her argument. And I just thought, while this video is somewhat relevant, it seemed like it is getting a lot of views. It'd be a good thing to talk about. Yeah, and
Right.
abortion apologetics is something I guess I'm somewhat skilled in,
Right.
aside from making the dumb comedy videos. So this won't be as much a funny video, but I hope it's still entertaining and also edifying to people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I've been wanting to do like pro-life apologetics for
Mhm.
on the channel at least for quite a while, and I just haven't found the opportunity because like the main thing that I like talking about is like Catholic Protestant stuff. So this
Mhm.
is something that Catholics, Protestants hopefully can unite
Ecumenical,
on.
yes.
Ecumenicism, and we can engage the culture in that way. And I actually just picked up this book. It's the second edition of Persuasive Pro-Life by Trent Warren,
Nice.
and it is I haven't finished it yet, but it is so good. So highly suggested that you guys,
Mhm.
if you are interested in this conversation, pick up this book because Trent goes through it all. It's amazing. Do you have
Very.
this book?
I've read the first edition. I don't have the second edition. I need to pick it
Yeah.
up, but
It just
yeah,
it
very good.
statistics, and I think there's a few like expanded parts. But yeah,
Mhm.
dude, I'm so hyped to be doing this with you. And I think so we're jumping in on the abortion conversation a few minutes in. They talked about a few reasons why they're pro-life or why they're pro-abortion.
Yeah, they talked about personhood. They talked about, well, at some point they got off to a tangent. What is a woman?
Right.
Um,
Yeah, they went, yeah.
this medical student, she like accepts. She's like, yeah, it's a human being medically, but it's not a person. At this point, she's moving on to basically what's known as like the bodily autonomy argument, where they kind of like just grant, okay, they are a person, but abortion is still okay, uh,
Right.
which is kind of the core argument we're gonna be trying to refute today. So
So that is also sort of the difference as well, and it's very nuanced, right? And it's you're free to have whatever opinion you like when it comes to your comfort or discomfort level on abortion. I'm not telling you that you should be comfortable with abortion. I'm saying that it should be left up to the individual. I just want to make that clear. And it's all about, so I say it is a unique human individual, but they do not have personhood. Being a person and being a human don't necessarily have to be the same thing. And
What's the difference?
well, the difference is that you are not born yet. You are not autonomous. You have not gained personhood by entering into the world and breathing that first breath.
Oh my goodness, dude. I can't continue. Okay.
what's the moral
Uh,
difference between a born person and unborn person? Well, they're not born yet.
yeah, no,
It's like,
exactly. It's
okay,
like
keep
in
going.
every human rights violation of a particular group of people that you can think of throughout history, it's always, yeah, they're human. It's always at least, yeah, they're human, but they're not a person yet, or they don't have moral value, intrinsic
Mhm.
worth, because they're not a person. And I'm going to arbitrarily define what I mean by person. So it excludes this kind of human being.
Mhm.
And that's that's really dangerous territory. We were talking before. All of the arguments that you might use in
Yeah.
support of abortion, just substitute
Yeah. So
slavery,
yep.
substitute,
And so she's denying the personhood here, but what's
Yeah.
interesting is right after this, she's gonna kind of do this for the sake of argument. Let's say that they are a person, and then this is where it gets into kind of her main argument.
Yeah.
Breath. And we also, I just want to recognize, we do grant fetuses the same exact rights that every living human being on earth has. We grant them the same rights.
In what way?
Because you, as a living individual, are not allowed to use someone else's body against their will. And if you wanted to do so, you would be criminalized for that. And so we are granting fetuses the exact same rights that everybody else here has, and that is to have autonomy, right? And if you do not have autonomy, meaning your body is not biologically autonomous, it cannot run its own biological systems without relying and potentially harming another individual, then you do not have the right to infringe on somebody else's body in order to sustain your own life.
She's framing it in such a way like human rights. I can think of 1,000 different things that would not fit that definition.
Mhm.
But the fact that she says, yeah, the human fetus, even if they are a person, they have the same rights that every other human has, the right to not be their bodily autonomy being infringed upon by someone else. But what else are you doing when you're ripping them apart in the womb? You know, like
Right, exactly.
I don't understand how that connection isn't made. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
So it's interesting. I don't know if you ever watched this. It's kind of a deeper cut, but Trent Horn debated this philosophy professor David Boonin. I think he's the guy who kind of popularized this argument in the like academic world. His whole thing is like, yeah, fetuses have the right to life just like anyone else does, but they don't have the right
Right.
to use someone's body. AKA, like you can't force someone to donate an organ. Is kind of like the
Right.
comparison they draw. And obviously, there's like that doesn't work at all.
No.
So she's kind of using that argument. I think maybe one thing to kind of clear up is what the right to life means, because it's more of like a negative right than a positive right, if that makes any sense. So like the right to life means you have the right to not be killed by someone, right? It's not,
Right.
oh, I have the right to be alive. So like, for example, if I'm dying of a disease, I don't have the right to not die of the disease. That doesn't really make sense. Or like if I was dying of a disease and I couldn't afford the treatment, I don't have the right to, kill someone and steal their money. It's not like
Right.
that's not what the right to life means. The right to life, it's a negative in the negative sense. You have the right to not be killed.
Right.
So in that sense, fetuses do not have the right to life under current law that allows abortion. Yeah, I think it's just kind of a silly way to put. I see what she's trying to do, and it's very clever because what she's trying to do is be like, yeah, this right to life you're speaking of is something that none of us have, and it's like, not really, because we do have the right to not be killed. It's true that I don't have the right to be in someone's womb, but that's more of a it's more of like a circumstantial thing. Like, yeah, of course I don't,
Yeah.
because that doesn't make any sense.
And it's such a
Yeah.
unique circumstance, right? Like the baby growing within the womb, like what is the purpose of the womb?
Mhm.
Like why is it in every single woman? No offense, guys. If you're watching this and you're a liberal, no offense. Why does every single woman have a womb naturally? Well, it's not for the woman. It's the only organ in your body that's made for someone else and to sustain someone else. And that someone else is your child. Right. And so it's a really unique situation. You know, people bring up like the violinist, like organ donation, like you're hooked up to someone for 9 months. You have the moral obligation to continue connected to them or whatever. But like really it's hard to have like an analogous situation where it's like your own offspring is specifically designed to grow and develop within this organ or attached to this organ that is made also for them. Like it's not like I'm going to borrow your kidney for 9 months, or I'm going to, suck off of some nutrients in your small intestines like I'm a parasite. It's an entirely different situation than that. And that's why when they make these sorts of comparisons, like, you have the right for someone to not infringe upon your bodily autonomy. It's just like it's super broad and generalized. And then she applies it to these particulars, like, oh, therefore the baby that's growing inside of your womb doesn't have a right to not be poisoned to death, not be burned to death and ripped apart and taken out of your womb. It's just, I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting position. Uh-oh. Seth's back. His computer froze. What were we talking about? Oh, yeah.
Subscribe to my Patreon so I can afford a new computer. No, I'm just kidding.
Everyone go subscribe to Seth. Go donate to his GoFundMe. We're starting it.
In what sense does a fetus have a right to life in her mind? I don't understand what she means.
And then it's like, okay, someone is infringing upon your right to bodily autonomy. Does that give you the right to infringe upon their bodily autonomy in her mind?
Yeah.
In
And
what sense?
I think
To what
later on
extent?
in the video she says, if you don't have autonomy, aka if you're a fetus, you don't actually have bodily autonomy. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, so they don't have that either. So what do you mean when you say they have the same rights?
Right. Yeah. It's it's very clear that she's like trying to describe a baby in the womb in such a specific way, such that the right to not be killed would just completely exclude them.
Yeah.
And so she's drawing these lines that are entirely arbitrary so that this position on abortion is just validated in her mind. So it's very interesting, and I'm excited to see if she tries to substantiate why she believes this is the line, why this is the line of personhood, or why this is the line of not having your bodily autonomy infringed upon. Because let's just be honest, whose body is being more, whose bodily autonomy is being more infringed upon? Someone who is basically getting their organs borrowed from them for 9 months in the most, that's obviously a super crude way to put it and not entirely accurate, but let's just, for the sake of argument, that person, or the person who's getting stabbed, pulled apart, poisoned, burned to death, and thrown out, like it's some like biohazard material. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just kind of ludicrous in my opinion.
We do grant
Yeah, that's probably
fetuses the same exact rights that every living human being on Earth has. We grant them the same rights. In what way? Because you, as a living individual, are not allowed to use someone else's body against their will. And if you wanted to do so, you would be criminalized for that. And so we are granting fetuses the exact same rights that everybody else here has, and that is to have autonomy, right? And if you do not have autonomy, meaning your body is not biologically autonomous, it cannot run its own biological systems without relying and potentially harming another individual, then you do not have the right to infringe on somebody else's body in order to sustain your own life.
What if I didn't want to infringe upon or use my son's body to sustain my own life, but I recognized, oh, his life, him being in my house under my roof, I have to spend hours every week laboring to buy food, water, diapers, wipes, and I don't want to do that anymore. You're infringing upon my bodily autonomy because I am obligated under law to have to provide for you. So what am I going to do?
Yep.
I'm going to kill you. Like how does that not logically follow using the argument that she's making?
Yeah, and she would say, well, he's not physically connected to your body, but like why does that morally matter that you're physically connected versus financially dependent, right?
Well, it's like, and I've heard other people make this same point, but it still sticks. Like the older that they get, the more resources they need, and the harder it is to keep them alive. When Nico was a newborn, it was harder to take care of him immediately out of the womb than it was for him to be taken care of when he was just inside the womb.
Yeah.
Like the world isn't made specifically to sustain the life of a newborn baby. The womb is, so it's like, it logically it doesn't hold up, and it's just it's just an arbitrary line that she's drawing to exclude to exclude preborn babies from that
Mhm.
same sort of right to not be killed,
Yeah.
right? To not have our life ended by
Yeah,
someone else.
and she seems to think that this bodily autonomy right is, like, the most absolute, most fundamental right that no other
Right.
right can trump, and it's like, isn't the right to life more fundamental?
Yeah, for
In
sure.
a situation like pregnancy where you can say, "Okay, there's 2 rights in conflict. There's the right to bodily autonomy, and then there's the right to life. Which one wins?" She's just kind of assuming bodily autonomy wins,
Right.
but
Yeah.
I don't think it does if you put it
Yeah.
that way. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, even if we were extending her argument and taking her argument for bodily autonomy, defining it exactly the way that she did in that conflict of rights,
Mhm.
which one wins? Yeah, I think you're exactly hitting the nail on the head right there.
Mhm.
Isn't that exactly what abortion is? Infringing on someone else's body in order to theoretically sustain your own life? I mean, I find it hard to believe they have the exact same rights as every other person in society when last year more than 1 million children were aborted in the United States, the highest in a decade, highest level in a decade. You don't see 1 million individuals being victims of homicide on the street in the United States. I certainly hope we never get to that
Mhm.
reality, but you can't legally take the life of another human being, a genetically unique human person. We can argue about personhood later on in any other circumstance than this one. So it is a unique under law circumstance in the United States today.
No, that's actually incorrect because you can in self-defense. You can end
Self
somebody.
defense.
So that's interesting. So Isabel is trying
What?
to flip it Isabel is trying to flip it back on her, which is smart because this is a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
Oh, there's no other situation where you can no one can, use someone else's body to sustain their life. It's like, well, there's no other situation where you can kill an innocent human being. And she says self-defense, which obviously takes away the innocent part,
Yeah.
which if she really could have put her in a corner there if she wanted to. Um,
But
but
but notice,
self-defense, is that at all equivalent to abortion?
yeah, what would be equivalent if we're, completely removing the context of pregnancy, developing human being, just like having two people in a similar situation in the way that this pro-abortion lady would be articulating it. If someone is stealing money from you, do you have the right to shoot them? No. You'd probably be locked up.
Mhm.
The only reason, like they were saying, the only reason that you might have the right to kill another person is if your own life is being threatened by that person.
Mhm.
And I know the pro-abortion lady is going to go on to talk about the risks of
Mhm.
being pregnant. But obviously, you see that's disanalogous.
Mhm.
Just because there's risks associated with being pregnant, physical risks, doesn't mean
Right.
that one, it's the baby threatening you. So
Mhm.
you just have like some right to just end the baby's life.
Right.
You know,
Because interesting, yeah, there's the one is it actually life-threatening? And then you could look at, okay, well, there are at least theoretically pregnancies that are life-threatening.
right,
The other thing is you cannot use self-defense against an innocent person, right?
right,
Because it's just not self-defense, right? You
right.
can't say like, "Oh, I mean, you could even flip it around because they like to talk about like organ donation, right? So, is it self-defense to steal someone's organ to sustain yourself? Definitely not. They would be the
Right,
first to tell you that's not self-defense. That's
right.
something else other than self-defense. Self-defense is against an aggressor who is not innocent, who is actively like going to kill you. Like it has to be like a last resort. Like,
Yeah,
no, I have reason to believe this person would kill me if, or whatever. And yeah, I just don't see how she can say those two things are similar.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just so weird. It's the reason why it's so tough because in these sorts of conversations, it is important, and I think it is helpful to sometimes bring up analogies, but
Hmm.
analogies can only extend so far. And even in these analogies that we try and bring up, it's just like it's hard to see how that how helpful they really can be because it can kind of put across another
Hmm.
misunderstanding of what your view is, right? So yeah, it's just interesting because even in the argument about self-defense and stuff like that, um, it wouldn't be the person putting your life in danger. It would almost be like your life is in danger And in order for your life to not be in danger, you would have to kill this person who isn't directly
Right.
intending your life to be ending or whatever, but is somehow wrapped up in the situation. And so you have to kill that person in order for your life to not end or something like that. And that's
Yeah.
obviously an extreme example, which
Mhm.
shouldn't be really applied to abortion because I don't think
Right.
it's
Yeah.
consistent, but still, it's just like, obviously you don't have the moral right to end another person's life like that.
You can end somebody's
Self-defense.
Yeah, because
Okay.
that is what it is. Ultimately, you are defending yourself. You are defending your body. You are defending yourself against physical, emotional harm. Also, are you aware of the leading cause of death for pregnant people in the United States?
Women, moms.
Oh, here's
How
the.
would you want
Oh
me
yeah,
to
here's the
Yeah.
whole
specifically, but I
conversation.
don't pressure you to do the
Let's see how
same.
long it goes.
It's a
And I choose
while.
to.
And I get it because this isn't specifically a discussion on abortion, but I just find it so funny. It went off the rails for so
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
They're
It
just
was.
talking about,
According to
yeah,
my thing, it's like 12 minutes. Well, no, 22 minutes
daggum, dude.
of.
22 minutes on
Well,
that.
there's a short. Well, yeah. Unless I did the timestamp wrong, it looks like it's like 20 minutes because
Golly,
we went
bro.
on to a bunch of like side. It wasn't just back and
Yeah,
forth what
that
the women.
stuff.
It was like a
Right,
lot of
right.
other things.
Internal organs and
Oh,
bodily
well, that's different. Yeah,
resources.
your
Mhm.
internal organs, that would be unique to motherhood. Yeah.
Right. And so the fact that there is no other scenario where you can force a living person to use their body to save the life of another person means that you are trying to grant fetuses rights that no other person on this
No,
earth has.
I think you're right to describe motherhood as a singular phenomenon. Yeah, it is unique.
Mhm. And motherhood is
Yeah.
something that
You can probably stop there. So I think this can be actually somewhat convincing if you're not prepared for it. Because like when you think about it, it's like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, like is this pro-life thing? Like, is this something beyond what
Mhm.
anyone else would have? Um, I think the way she phrased it is, yeah, it can be tricky. There is no other scenario where you can force a living person to use their body to save the life of another person. And Michael, like, rightly, like, kind of says, oh no, I can't really think of any. Like, pregnancy is
Right.
pretty unique. What I wish he would have done is thrown around it back at her and said, can you think of any scenario where it's okay to kill an innocent human being
Yes.
to protect your right to bodily autonomy?
Right.
Because
Right.
she probably can't think of. I mean, she would maybe say self-defense, which I think we already showed why that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But she doesn't realize it's a double-edged sword. Like pregnancy is
Yeah.
unique on both ends, right? It's unique for the mother morally, and it's unique for the fetus morally.
Yeah.
So when you have this, again, it goes back to like which right wins if you want to pin them as rights. If you really want to say like we don't actually believe pregnancy is a infringement on bodily autonomy, but if we grant
Right.
that, can we really say that that is more fundamental than the right to life?
Exactly.
I don't think so.
And honestly, given how unique this relationship between the mother and the child in the womb is, she brings that up as an argument as to why it would be morally okay to end the life. I guess I don't understand her argument there. It's like it's a
Yeah.
new unique situation, therefore what?
Yeah,
Like you can
that's
kill
a
like,
good point. Yeah, there's
so
a little
what?
bit of a there's
Like
some
it
sort
is
of
unique.
there's some sort of fallacy going on there where it's like, yeah, this is the only scenario where we should act this way.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's like, yeah,
It's like, so
it's
what?
yeah,
It's a unique
yeah,
situation. You don't
exactly.
need to have,
Mhm,
comparable situations in other parts of life in
mhm,
order for that specific relationship with its unique rights to be validated. Right. And
yeah,
I'm sure if we were given enough time, we could think of other scenarios in which there are
mhm,
unique moral rights or moral obligations put on people
mhm,
that might not have a comparable situation, but that doesn't invalidate them. Like, what argument would you use to say,
mhm.
oh, well, sorry, unfortunately, there's not another situation that I can think of that's comparable or analogous to
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Therefore, you can kill someone. Like, what's the
Yeah.
argument? I don't know. I just don't understand. Like,
There are actually a couple scenarios that I can think of. One is, and I'm not the first one to think of this, but the idea of like, okay, suppose you're a mother, you have your child, you don't like breastfeeding, so you buy formula, you give your kid formula, and then one day there's like a blizzard and you're locked in your house and you can't go to the grocery store and you run out of formula. Do you have a moral right to breastfeed your child if you run out of formula?
right.
I
Right.
think
Yeah.
most people, even maybe this person, might say yes, you do, but that would
Yeah.
be using your body to sustain someone else's life. Like
Yeah.
that's pretty close. It's still not the same as pregnancy, but it's pretty close.
Right. I mean, it's very similar. Yeah, for
Hmm.
sure. Because how would you defend the position that you specifically don't have the moral
Hmm.
obligation when it's perfectly within your capacity
Hmm.
to give this life-saving, um I guess not procedure, but this life-saving nutrients to your
Hmm.
child, and you refrain from doing it. Why? Because it makes you uncomfortable, or
Yeah.
because it's like what? Like obviously, the vast majority of people. I don't know if this abortion advocate would, just to try and stay
Hmm.
consistent, but the vast majority of people would say, yeah, you kind of do have the obligation. Number one, it's your child, but even if it wasn't your child, if you it was perfectly within your means, with no harm to yourself, no risk of life to yourself, if it's just this
Hmm.
person that you're able to feed, and it's just like discomfortable, uncomfortable for you, like what would yeah, like why would that not be a moral
Yeah.
obligation for you? It's kind of like maybe you're walking by this pond, and you see like a 2-year-old in the pond drowning, but it's really cold that day,
Hmm.
but you're the only one around, and you know perfectly how to swim,
Hmm.
and you're walking by, and you're like, yeah, it's kind of cold. It's really uncomfortable for me. I'd be really cold. I'd be soaking wet. I know I
Hmm.
could save that child, but I'm not even gonna try. I'm just gonna walk past. Like
Hmm.
obviously there's this moral imperative for you to dive in and save that child.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Are you familiar with the violinist thought
Yes,
experiment? Right.
yes, I have heard that argument.
So I guess the Cliff Notes version is basically saying if you're plugged into someone and they're like using your blood to survive, do you have a right to unplug? And
Right.
it's kind of everyone kind of agrees like, yeah, I think you are allowed to. And I'm pretty sure based on what I've heard from people like Trent Horn, even in Catholic teaching, like you would be allowed to unplug from someone who needs, they have some sort of disease and they need your blood to
Mhm.
live. I also think that's not analogous either because
Right.
again, it's like a passive thing. And I think if you were to modify the thought experiment to say like, okay, suppose you're plugged in and there's no way to unplug unless the person dies.
Mhm.
Are you allowed to stab them and then unplug?
Right.
Like if that's the only
Right.
way to unplug, I think people would be more like, I don't know about that. Like, can you do that?
Right.
I don't know. I wonder what this person would say to a thought experiment like that. But yeah, this idea that like you're basically just refusing, like an abortion is just refusing or refusing bodily, I don't know, support,
Right.
and it's framed as like this passive action, like, oh, I'm just not, I'm not going to donate my organ is the same thing as I'm not going to. And I
Yeah.
would say like, okay, like if you don't want to be pregnant, I think you have every right to refuse pregnancy. You just have to find
Yeah.
a way to do it non-violently. Like,
Right.
right,
Right.
you could have a C-section. You could, I don't know, like theoretically, if like it was possible to do like like a womb transfer to another woman or something. I don't know. Like
Yeah, right.
it's like, and they would probably be like, well, there's no technology available to. The only option is abortion. It's like, well, I guess there's no way for you to refuse in a non-violent way.
Right. Yeah, and I think that violinist argument is usually used to combat, when we say, oh, even if the pregnancy is unplanned and you find yourself with child, or if it wasn't an accident, but also wasn't your choice, like you were sexually
Mhm.
assaulted or something like that. Do you like if a drunk driver ran into you on the
Mhm.
road and you woke up? I think that's sometimes how they present it.
Yeah, yeah.
You woke up and you're attached to some person, some random person you don't know. I also, again, I think that there is there is a special, unique obligation that
Mhm.
parents have to their children,
Absolutely, yeah.
that's disanalogous to your obligation to a random stranger that you just so happen to find yourself hooked up with. That wasn't phrased correctly. Hooked
Yeah.
up to, not hooked up
Well, in the
with.
case of pregnancy, it could be hooked up with, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Um,
Yeah,
no, but it's true. It's even if like, for example, if there's a beggar on the street who needs money and you don't give them money and then they die of starvation, that'd be really sad.
right,
I don't think you'd be guilty of murder in that case necessarily.
right,
But if your kid asks you for food and you say no and they die of starvation, you kind of are that is murder, right? Because you have
yeah,
an obligation to feed them. So yeah, that's the other dimension that I think isn't recognized by some of these people, is that yeah, you have more of a responsibility for your children than you do for a stranger.
Yeah.
half of the population can possibly experience.
In per-
And the fact that there is half the population that will never have the possibility of experiencing that
It's a great pity for us.
makes it so that when you are pushing for abortion bans, it is essentially a sexist issue, and you are creating
Bronte,
a
you know that the pro-life movement is mostly women. And you know that women are split 50-50 on the issue.
also
Well,
it's
here,
not
here, pause
pro-life.
here.
Ooh.
So actually, this is an interesting point, because she's trying to say, yeah, it's sexist to be for an abortion ban, but you can kind of use her logic again here, because it's like, okay, under the current like pro-choice laws, women are given a special right to kill their offspring, which is something
Right.
that
Special
men don't
murder
have.
rights.
Yeah, men don't have. I can't think of any situation legally where a man can make the choice solely by himself. I'm going to kill
Right.
one of my children,
Right.
and their
Unless
response
they
is,
identify
yeah.
as a man.
Well, yeah. There you go.
Chest feeding.
Chest feeding.
Oh gosh. Yeah, no, that is interesting. And I get the point that she's trying to make, but also if we're going to use these isms, we could just say, oh yeah, this is just ageism. Oh, you're not born yet? You're not
Yep.
old enough to have this right to be taken care of by your parents, right?
Yep.
You only have the right to be given nutrients and get your diaper changed and food and water and all this stuff if you're born. But if you're not born and you are physically attached to your mother, you don't have that right. Sorry. So you're ageist, actually.
Yep.
If
I
it
guess
is
so.
anti-choice, because if you actually
Whatever language you want to use. The
Yeah,
movement against
it's
abortion.
anti-choice.
The movement against abortion is mostly women, and women are split basically 50-50 in America on the issue. So to call it sexist or misogynist or whatever seems a little bit silly. It would seem to me that you are describing this as, the men forcing this on the women, but that just, if you look at the makeup of the movement against abortion, I call it the pro-life movement, and you look at the public opinion on abortion among women, is mostly women.
So the Pew Research Center
But also, I would just add, like, even if it was all men against all women,
Mhm.
it wouldn't change our moral position. It wouldn't change any of the arguments that we use. And so notice how a lot of the arguments that the pro-abortion person, pro-choice, whatever you want to say, uses has this
Yeah.
appeal to emotion, or this appeal to, oh, you guys are just oppressing us. It's just like old white men wanting to
Yeah.
regulate our bodies.
Yeah.
It's like
I
we
don't
could-
think she's not quite making this argument, but one argument I've heard, which is probably one of the worst arguments ever, is that like literally people are against abortion just because they want to control women. Like somehow that like brings us joy to like oppress women. And it's like,
Yeah.
do you really think there's like more than 5 people in the US that feel that way? Like
yeah.
like what benefit?
Well, I
like,
mean,
what is the
just to
point of
be
being like
honest,
going? I was gonna say, like, we
it
go into
brings
the-
me joy to prevent abortion. So
Yeah.
hey, I mean,
Oh,
there you
absolutely,
go.
yeah. It does, yeah. But it's like, think about it, like going to like the March for Life, marching in the cold. Like I'm doing that because I just want to oppress women. Like it makes me
Right.
feel good.
Right.
It's like
You want to abolish slavery just because you want to oppress farmers. You hate those
Yeah,
farmers.
exactly.
You don't want their plantation to be ran efficiently. You don't. What's the backbone of the country? You hate
Mm.
America because you don't want these slaves to be providing for us. So you're anti-farm, anti-America. Like, okay, it's kind of just, to me, that's just like empty rhetoric.
Mhm.
Like, oh, you're so hateful because you're bringing up this moral argument against killing people, or
Mhm.
against enslaving people in the case of slavery.
Mhm.
And also, it's funny because I also feel like going back to the abolitionist movement in the time of chattel slavery, most of the people who wanted it abolished were white. So like
Mhm.
I can see some similarities there. It's like, oh, you people just want to abolish because you identify with this certain demographic, and
Mhm.
then it ends up not being the case. So it's just kind of ironic.
95% of OBGYNs say that they would assist a patient in receiving an abortion regardless of their personal feelings about it. So
That's crazy.
where I
So an
stand,
LBGYN could think that what
LGBTQIA.
actually murdering a baby, and then that person would do it anyway.
because
Wow, I certainly don't trust that person's judgment. Goodness gracious.
it is because of their, and that's why I bring it up, because when we
Yeah,
look at
if that's true, that's wild if that's true. If they're like
Yeah.
pro-life OBGYNs are like, well, I disagree with this, but I'll do it anyway. That's
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd like to look into that because that sounds
The OBGYN statistic is the moral compass that we should
Yep.
abide by, you know, like
who are trained to care for the health and well-being of pregnant people, even they understand, 95% of them understand that their personal feelings about this matter cannot override and should not override a patient's ability to access comprehensive medical care.
Notice how she frames it as, okay, you might have your personal opinion about the subject, but that shouldn't trump the rights of this other woman, right? And it's like the whole argument is whether women should have special murder rights to begin with, right? So it's like, like you have your opinion on the subject, I have my opinion on the subject, and we're talking about what should be legislated. Okay, so it's not a clash of, oh, you have your opinion and you can implement that however you want in your personal life, but this is the real world where objectively women have this special right.
It is simply a fact that your child can and does use your body, even if it is against your will. So of course that can happen because we're talking about the unique case of motherhood.
Right. And so you are arguing that in no other case can someone use someone else's body against their will, unless we're talking about motherhood. Right. So you only think that we should remove bodily autonomy from people with uteruses.
Well, I don't know what you mean by bodily autonomy. We've already accepted at the beginning of
That's a good point.
that we don't.
Oh,
yeah, because she's basically saying by taking away the right to abortion, you are taking away bodily autonomy only from women. And it's like, no, we also think that right to kill a child should not be allowed for anyone.
Yeah. We're taking away a right that you don't have. Yeah. And
it's true. She didn't really define what I mean, she kind of did, but it's like, I don't know, is bodily autonomy says I can drink alcohol and get drunk, right? Like that's part of my right.
Right.
But then if I get in a car and I drive and I kill someone, am I legally responsible?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not an exercise of bodily autonomy.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because she's specifically talking about, oh, you think that motherhood is just this weird, unique circumstance in which the mother is personally obligated to use her body to physically provide for her child, and there's no other situation that you could even think of. So it's just this weird obligation that the woman has, just because she magically gets pregnant. But it's like when the baby's out of the womb, both parents have that obligation. And it's that obligation that they have. Maybe the child later on can survive, can kind of, make their own breakfast or whatever, but you still have to provide for them. You still have to make sure they get to school, they get educated, they have like you go to your job if both parents are working or one parent is working. If the father alone's working, then who has that obligation, that moral obligation to go and provide for and give nutrients to that child? Well, it's the father, but both parents have that moral obligation. And so she's acting like it's just this unique circumstance because you guys are sexist and you hate women and you think women should have this moral obligation. But it's just like,
and she can claim that, oh, that's different because they're not like connected to your body. But like,
so what? That's arbitrary. That's arbitrary.
It's arbitrary. But too, like, I mean, your bodily health is impacted. Like, you get less sleep and that impacts you emotionally, physically. Right?
Like, I have not been sleeping for the past 2 months.
Exactly.
Amen, brother.
So you could be like, my health is impacted. This child is so dependent on me that it's actually affecting my health. It's like,
or what if you're poor and you don't have enough money to provide enough food for everyone to be satiated, but you give more food to your child so that they can be healthy and it affects your health because you're not getting enough nutrients for yourself.
Mhm.
You know, it's like, I don't know. It's I feel like her argument is just kind of like relying upon one, there not being many uh analogous situations that we can think of
Mm.
that have that same sort of moral force. But she's just relying upon this unique obligation that parents have
Mhm.
for providing in the way that they can, right? In the way that they can, providing for their children, making sure that they survive and have their basic needs met,
Yeah.
right? And
And I
so
would even
that
say that
extends
the
throughout all their life.
yeah, and I would even say, like, the obligation to not kill goes beyond parents, right? It's
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you really look at, again, abortion is not just a passive, like, "Oh, I'm not gonna get involved." It's like, that's not really what abortion is, right?
Yeah, right.
It's the intentional killing, the direct killing,
Yeah.
and every
Yeah, you're right.
person,
You're right.
regardless if you're a parent or a stranger, you do not have that right. You have an obligation to not do that, if you wanna
Yeah.
put it that way, right?
Yeah. So yeah, and that's true. Just because you know you're physically connected to this person, or you have to provide for them from your own, and it's so like mentally taxing and physically taxing. Therefore, what you can like the you can kill them, like what I don't know. I guess there's just such a large disconnect. They are relying upon you for providing their needs. Therefore, she's acting like you can just like stop doing that,
Mhm.
as if abortion
There's
wasn't
n Yeah,
injecting them with poison.
there's really no passive option with pregnancy.
Yeah,
Honestly, if you wanna argue which one's more passive, it would be the one that doesn't get the abortion, because 'cause you're kinda just continuing as normal, as natural
yeah,
as you would,
yeah.
but there's no passive option where you just like, "Oh, I refuse to be a parent."
Well, good stuff, dude. We need to do more of these.
I'm down to do more videos on abortion.
Yeah, dude, for
I
sure.
think it'd be fun to do, you could either do, like, a tier list of, like, the best
Yes, we were talking about that. We
yeah,
need to do that.
it could be,
So
like,
the
the tier
best.
list of, like, the best I kinda wanna do, like, best pro-life, best pro-choice, and the worst pro-life, worst pro-choice, so maybe tier
Yes,
list isn't the right, unless you do 2 tier lists? I
we
don't
could
know. We'll have to think
do
about that.
ranking ranking the best and worst pro-life arguments, and then ranking the best and worst pro-choice arguments. And the pro-life arguments can be on my channel, and then the pro-choice arguments can be on your channel, and we just
Okay.
rank all of them F. None
Okay,
of them
yeah.
are good.
Well, I mean, that'd be funny, but also some of them are less worse than others, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I think this one where you try to frame it this way, I think is probably their best argument,
Right.
because anything else is like, it'll either lead to something like, slavery being okay. Because like,
Yeah.
this argument doesn't really, you can't really replace slavery with, I mean, you could be like, my plantation, my choice, but I don't know. I don't think it's as clear as like when they say like, oh, overpopulation, and it's like, so can we just like kill orphans to prevent,
Yeah.
or it's like, obviously not.
In no other case that can someone think about that you have the right to take my money-making property
Mm.
away from me. This is how I make my living. There's
Can you
no
think of
other
any other
situation.
scenario? Yeah.
Yeah, can you think of any other scenario where the government can infringe upon my right to provide for my family by taking away my property?
Mm.
It's like within the argument is just you're assuming your position is right.
Yeah. All you have
So
to
in
do
the
is make
case,
it sound as point out how unique it is, and apparently that's enough to
yeah, apparently. Sadly, I've run out of time.
yeah.
But guys, go check out Deuterocomical. We're gonna do some more of these pro-life videos. Hopefully, hey, maybe next time we'll do the ranking thing. What do
Yeah,
you
that'd be
want
fun.
next time? Do you wanna rank the best pro-life arguments or the best pro
Yeah.
arguments?
I think if we do the pro-life, we could do like a tier list, because
Yes,
I
yes.
think it's good as it is to talk about the arguments that are good for our side. I think we also need to kind of talk about the ones that aren't so good that we should stop using.
Yeah, for sure.
I think
For
that could be
sure.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Epic. So yeah, thank you guys for tuning in, for watching all the way through. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a thumbs up. Go subscribe to Seth, subscribe to the Catechumen, and we hope that by our learning the faith and defending babies from being murdered, you will do the same. You have a wonderful day, and we'll see you guys next time.